right, Sean Zittel here with the Hall of Famer himself, Al Bernstein. And Al, the kickoff press tour has concluded for Canelo-Crawford. And I know it's easier to break down X's and O's on tape than it is to play armchair psychologist.
Yeah, right.
But any takeaways from the battle, before the battle?
Yeah, we never know, do we, before these fights about who has a mindset that will help them, and especially this far in advance of a fight, right? We're way in advance of when that fight's going to take place. But, it's obvious, I think, that both men want to make sure they don't cede the high ground in terms of the psychological battle. I mean, even Crawford, has kind of gotten under his skin enough so that we see that side of Canelo, which comes out every once in a while, where he's more rambunctious and maybe hostile. But it was, I think the thing about this event is, as the promotional stuff goes on, I think we're going to see more and more of that kind of psychological sparring.
Has either guy thus far not ceded ground better to your eyes?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, I think they're both being who they are. And the other thing is, I swear, I've been doing boxing for 45 years. There are maybe 4 or 5 fights that I could really go back to and say, gosh, I really think that guy was psychologically a little bit intimidated by his situation or whatever. Very seldom do you know in advance, I think.
Right. As for the fight itself, I know we're 3 months out. That's enough time to change your mind.
Yeah.
But what is it, June 27th?
Yeah.
Who do you give the edge to in this matchup?
Listen, when this fight was announced, my initial reaction was that, it's a lot of weight for Crawford to go up to. He started below 147, obviously, as a fighter, so he's going pretty far up in weight. Now, Canelo himself was a 154-pounder, so, he went all the way up to 168, but there's a little difference there. And I think that that's a big issue. Now, whether that's enough to make it impossible for Crawford to win this fight, that remains to be seen. This is a different Canelo Alvarez. It's not the same one from 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, or even 3. So there's that. And then there's all the different eccentricities of each boxer. For Crawford, he's not going to hurt Canelo. But almost nobody hurts Canelo. He's got a rock chin. But can Crawford, who isn't always a volume puncher, make sure that if he's being the boxer puncher, he throws enough punches to win every round?
Right.
That's important.
Right.
And for Canelo, if he doesn't hurt Terence Crawford, which he might, can he sustain in those later rounds where we've seen Canelo Alvarez from time to time just fade a little bit?
Yeah.
Crawford's a very good fighter into the later rounds. We saw him stop Porter, and we've seen him have other excellent performances. So, there's a lot of those questions swirling around. But right now, I don't know if I could pick either guy, really. I would have said Canelo Alvarez before, but now I'm like, and it's always happened. It always happens when fights get closer. Now I'm like, I don't want to be out on a limb so much for that.
Well, it's funny you said not the same Canelo from 5, 4, or 3 years ago. What if the Canelo from 2 years ago, in the fight you called, his last one on Showtime against Munguia, or not Munguia, Charlo? If that version of Canelo, is that enough to get the job done?
Yeah, I think it is. If he can that's a good point. If he can fight that way. Now, Jermell Charlo helped him by being so passive in that fight. I mean, he really did not, it wasn't an aggressive performance by him. But that's a very good point. You bring up a really good point. That version of Canelo could well be, because if Crawford feels something powerful early and he isn't as aggressive as he wants to be, the thing about Canelo Alvarez in that fight was he threw a little more volume than he normally does, and he was a little more offensive minded than sometimes he is. He likes to counter. I agree. That version might be enough for him to win this fight.
Does this fight remind you of any fight from history?
Trying to think of somebody coming up and and coming way up in weight. I mean, we have many fighters come up in weight and try a couple of weight divisions, like Jose Napoles coming up to fight.
Was that Monzone?
Monzone, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a perfect example. And ultimately, the size was the factor in that fight, right?
Ray Robinson, Joey Maxim.
Ray Robinson, Joey Maxim would be an example.
Although they'll be fighting indoors, and there will be no 13
right,
rounds.
Yeah,
Right,
he won't be like in the heat.
Right.
But so there are fights like that, and I guess you'd have to look back at all of them to see whether the smaller man has come up with an important win. But I think this fight is going to be a unique one.
Let me ask you this, Al, because you covered Floyd Mayweather from his pro debut to his last fights.
Yeah,
right. I mean, with some interruptions in between, but still, you bookended
exactly.
his career and covered Crawford in the finest night of his career.
Yeah, right.
Who, head-to-head, going hypothetical, Mayweather and Crawford.
I think it's a terrific fight. And I guess it also depends on what weight they fight at, maybe. I don't know.
Let's say
They
47.
could fight at a couple different weights, because they could fight at 135, they could fight at 140, they could fight at 147.
Right.
I think it would be a fascinating fight. And Terence Crawford is such a good ring technician that you could picture him and Mayweather, in a very interesting fight. I might lean toward Mayweather a little bit in that fight, only because Crawford isn't. Sometimes Crawford's not the guy that beats Mayweather, in my opinion, and the guy and like Maidana did very well against him. I thought that fight was a draw, the first one. Are the ones that are very active, can put pressure on him without, and I don't know if Crawford's that guy, so it could be it would go to a decision for sure, and it might be a close one, but I'd lean toward Mayweather a little bit.
And lastly, I'm being greedy here, Al, so I understand if it's too greedy, but you would have these wonderful keys to victory before so many of them.
Keys to victory, wow.
For Canelo, keys to victory.
Yeah, I think, I haven't thought about this specifically, but...
This probably takes hours of tape time.
Yeah,
I'm asking
it does,
you cold,
but I'll throw a few out. I think part of it is don't give rounds away, because number two, fight the last 3 rounds effectively, if there is a last 3 rounds, and go to the body. He's such a good body puncher. For Crawford, I think it's use lateral movement, enough lateral movement, and make sure you finish rounds, because you're facing Canelo Alvarez, who just doesn't lose close decisions for the most part. Even the Bivol fight, many people think were closer than it should have been.
Right.
And make sure you finish rounds so that you're the last person that leaves the impression in the judges. And you must, at some point, even momentarily, back him up. You're probably not going to keep him on his back foot the whole fight. You probably won't hurt him badly, but you've got to make him back up or stop coming forward, and do it without facing one of those big counter punches that he throws.
Thank you so much, Al.
All right, take care.